A few minutes later, Milton, with his arms behind his back and a serene smile, came out of the shop and began to walk down the hallway. Chow Chow appeared, clenched her fist and with an angry expression mentioned that no one on the third floor had seen Poppy. Upon hearing her voice, Milton came out of his trance and his attention focused on her, making him somewhat curious. Milton closed his eyes, let out a sigh and with a serene expression, pretended to be somewhat surprised. He admitted that maybe he had heard wrong, adding that listening to other people's conversations was not very polite. Chow Chow began to observe her surroundings carefully and her eyes widened in confusion. She did not know where Shang was. She remembered that he was talking with Milton. Milton remained silent, opened his eyes and with a smile, explained that Shang had an urgent matter to attend to, and had left a moment ago. Chow Chow's eyes began to shine with rage. She could not help but feel somewhat furious upon seeing that Shang had left without saying goodbye to her. She clenched her fist tightly, and with an expression full of fury revealed that she knew Milton always did the same. Milton began to observe her in silence, not knowing what to say. With a kind smile, Milton promised her that the next time they saw their friend, he would invite him to eat. She began to ponder and decided to leave. Milton's attention was fixed on her. With a curious expression, he asked where she was going. Chow Chow began to walk away from him and said that she was going home. She left the room and started heading towards her house. She was steaming from the head as she was very furious. Milton began to stare at her silently. He began to walk through the room and with a serene gaze gave the order to one of his men to send someone to take Chow Chow home. His subordinate lowered his head before him and nodded. Milton approached the windows of the building, began to gaze toward the ground and sank into his thoughts. Outside the building, his subordinate opened the car door, and Chow Chow prepared to get in. Milton's attention was fixed on her. He was certain that sooner or later she would understand him. Everything he had done had been for her own good. While his eyes were shining with seriousness, he asked when Lan Che was going to arrive. While Milton was enjoying the views of the city, his subordinate approached him and replied that Lan Che would land the next day at 3 in the afternoon at dock number 001. With a serene gaze, Milton adjusted his monocle glasses and asked his subordinate to go receive him in advance and also take Chow Chow with him. The subordinate began to look at Milton and mentioned that Chow Chow was not very happy right now. Milton began to ponder silently, then with a calm expression asked him to simply say it was an order from their father. He knew she could not always be allowed to do whatever she wanted. Milton began to imagine Chow Chow and his eyes started to shine with confidence. He knew that the daughter of the Count of the Starry Space had grown for more than 20 years in a greenhouse and considered that she should have already matured. He was convinced that precisely because she had met so few people, if she encountered such an extraordinary being as Lan Che, she would not be so easily interested in insignificant creatures. Milton clenched his fist tightly, and his eyes widened with fury. To him, Shang was nothing more than a peasant who appeared out of nowhere, relying on his good looks to climb the great tree that was the Shi's family. He considered it a farce to think this was a casual encounter, and he found it insulting that Shang believed everyone was as naive and easy to deceive as Chow Chow. While Milton was lost in thought, his subordinate began watching him silently, not knowing what to do. At that moment, something strange happened and the ground began to shake. Milton and his subordinate couldn't help but feel somewhat confused. He turned around and his eyes filled with fear and confusion, making him start to sweat like crazy. He didn't know what was happening. Then his attention fixed on something, and his eyes widened in terror. He couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. Someone surrounded by a powerful golden martial energy burst through the window of the floor where Milton was and struck hard. Poor Milton had no time to react and took the attack directly. Milton's body was thrown and crashed against the wall. The subordinate turned around, clenched his fist and couldn't help but panic. With a worried gaze he asked if Milton was okay. Milton's body hit the wall, breaking it into pieces. The attack had been so strong that it had burned part of his clothes. Milton opened his mouth and began to spit blood. He was injured and almost on the verge of death. As the curtain of smoke was disappearing, someone wearing an elegant suit began to walk toward Milton. It was Shang. Our boy began to stare at him with a gaze full of rage, adjusted his tie and made up a lie. He accused Milton of having mistreated and cruelly killed his beloved porcupine pet. Because of this, he declared that he would avenge his space pet and tear him into 1,000 pieces until death. With his mouth full of blood, Milton raised his head and couldn't help but feel somewhat confused and asked our boy to stop talking nonsense. Just before Milton could finish speaking, Shang focused and using his power, launched a slash of energy which began advancing quickly toward him. Seeing this, Milton panicked, knowing that this was not good. Just before the slash could hurt Milton, his subordinate got in the way, put his arms in front of his chest to block the attack, and called Lu Shang daring and questioned if he knew who he was facing. Once the energy slash made contact with the subordinate's body, it exploded into pieces. With an expression full of fear, Milton put his hand over his chest where he had the wound. He was unable to believe that Long, an expert at the peak of level 11, had died from a single attack. Long's corpse fell to the ground. With an arrogant gaze, Lu Shang began to walk toward Milton and mentioned that he had thought Long was strong. He made it clear that anyone who stood in the way of his revenge against Milton would die. Milton couldn't help but feel fear and asked him not to come closer. Our guy grabbed Milton by the neck, and seeing this, he started sweating like crazy. Knowing this wasn't good, Lu Shang grabbed Milton by the neck and lifted him up, making him start to writhe in pain. While our boy's body was surrounded by martial energy, he began to gaze toward the ground and told Milton that he should have anticipated this day when he killed his porcupine, asking him if he knew how many years she had accompanied him. With eyes full of tears and sadness, Lu Shang revealed that she was 150 years old, more than a century of companionship. He demanded to know why he hadn't left her alone, being already an old sow. He concluded his lament questioning his motives and whether with such acts, he could still consider himself an inhabitant of stellar space. The people from the place approached and felt curious to know what was happening. A crowd formed around our boy. Lu Shang began to stare at Milton and his eyes started to shine with rage. He activated his mental power, causing his energy to begin expanding through the air. The mental power of Lu Shang began to take effect on the crowd and their attention was fixed on Milton. Everyone started talking among themselves. His humanity was questioned, wondering how he could not even forgive a 150-year-old porcupine. They identified him as Milton, the eldest son of the Z's family, expressing their disgust for such tastes. They commented that although he dressed like a decent person, he was a beast who deserved to be relegated to a trash planet. While foam was coming out of Milton's mouth, his attention focused on them and his eyes were filled with surprise and confusion. Lu Shang grabbed Milton tightly by the neck, making him open his mouth and start screaming in agony, and his eyes filled with tears. While Lu Shang's energy was expanding throughout the place, Milton began to observe him closely. He was being strangled and could not speak. He did not know when the hell he had killed a 150-year-old old sow. With eyes full of tears, Lu Shang asked his little pig to rest in peace, and assured her that he would soon kill Milton to avenge her. With an expression full of determination, Lu Shang focused and began to imbue his power into his fist, ready to attack. He declared that everything was over and sentenced Milton Nicholas to confess his sins amid endless pain and death. Noticing this, Milton couldn't help but clench his teeth and panicked, asking our guy to wait and not kill him, as he had something to say. Lu Shang made it clear that saying more was going to be useless, and prepared to deliver the final blow. Milton's eyes filled with surprise. Lu Shang strangled him tightly, ready to kill him, but at that moment, Milton revealed that his name was Milton Shiz, from the Cis family, and not Nicholas. Upon hearing this, Lu Shang let go of Milton. He began gasping heavily and felt relieved. Lu Shang played dumb and with a confused gaze asked what his name was. Milton, still bleeding from the mouth, revealed that his name was Milton Zis. Lu Shang clenched his fist tightly, began to stare at him and with a furious gaze asked him to speak louder. Milton panicked. He put his hand on his chest and with eyes shining with fear, was sincere and repeated desperately that he was Milton Zis, the son of Count Zis. Lu Shang did not believe his words. He began pointing at him with his finger and, with a serious expression, asked if he was sure he was Milton Zis, demanding that he show some identification. Milton took out his identification card and handed it to Lu Shang. Our guy read it carefully, thus confirming Milton's identity. Just as several spaceships were already on their way, Lu Shang began to touch his head and with a nervous smile, admitted that it was a shame, as he had mistaken him for someone else. He clarified that he would go look for the real Milton Nicholas to take revenge and promised to invite Milton to eat another time. With a kind smile, Lu Shang apologized. Milton let out a sigh of relief and with an angry gaze, felt as if he had survived a catastrophe now that the misunderstanding had been cleared up. It seemed really absurd to him that someone could confuse him with another Milton and come looking for revenge because of this. Someone who was in the crowd revealed that they had investigated and confirmed that it was him, Milton Zis, the son of Count Zis. Upon hearing this, Milton turned toward them and his eyes widened in confusion. The man who was holding the phone put his hand near his mouth and, with an expression full of contempt, mentioned that he found it unimaginable that the son of a count would do such shameful things. He admitted that, although he had heard for some time that some nobles from high society had very peculiar tastes, he had never believed it, but this proved it was true. Everyone's attention focused on Milton and they could not help but feel contempt toward him. People began to murmur among themselves. Milton panicked, approached them and shouted that everyone was wrong. He wasn't that Milton and hadn't done anything wrong. One of them gave Milton a hard slap on the face, demanding that he stop denying things. He shouted at him that he was Milton. He had just admitted it himself and had done so out loud. Milton fell to the ground, put his hand over his cheek and couldn't help sweating like crazy and going into shock. The man wearing glasses began pointing at him with his finger, and with a gaze full of rage made it clear that everyone had heard him. He called him an arrogant brat, questioning if he had shouted so loudly out of fear they wouldn't understand him. While Milton's eyes were shining, he started laughing like crazy, swearing that he hadn't done anything. Our boy left the shop and began to walk around the area. At the same time, a crowd started heading toward the shop, as they had heard that something big was happening. People took out their cameras to take pictures and began running toward the shop. Lu Sheng's attention was fixed on them and his eyes widened with joy, making a smile appear on his face. His eyes began to shine with tranquility since he had calmed down. Lu Sheng used his power and the disguise he was wearing began to disappear, transforming into energy. With a gaze full of joy, Lu Sheng did not look back. He was satisfied. After all, Milton was Chow Chow's brother and he couldn't kill him, but playing a little trick on him had been an acceptable option. Lu Sheng took out his phone, turned it on and started browsing through it. A surprised smile appeared on his face, as he couldn't believe that the speed at which news spread in this place was more than twice as fast as on the blue planet. According to the news, Milton, the Count's son, was cruel and inhumane and had very particular tastes, so women were warned to protect their little pigs well. Our boy's eyes began to shine with joy. He couldn't help but feel satisfied upon noticing that the rumors had already spread, making it impossible for Milton to now clear his name. For him, this kind of immediate revenge provided a much greater relief than what he would have obtained by just giving him a beating. Lu Sheng put his arms behind his head and began to whistle, knowing that today was a good day. After a few days, Lu Sheng went to Lan's spaceship. He and Lan embarked on the journey to the Celestial Throne Academy. With a calm gaze, Lan extended his hand and explained to our boy that the Celestial Academy was the most prestigious institution in each star sector, and only admitted martial geniuses with the greatest talent. Once recruited, they could enjoy the best resources, benefits, and inheritances of the entire sector. Lu Sheng crossed his arms and remained listening in silence with a curious expression. Lan began imagining several powerful warriors, revealing that each student was treated like a stellar noble with status comparable to that of a viscount, since even the weakest of its graduates reached at least level 11, and not just any level 11. With a confused gaze, Lu Sheng asked Lan if he had managed to enter the Celestial Academy. Upon hearing this, Lan's attention focused on our boy. He began to ponder in silence with a serene expression. Then, with a smile, he shook his head, admitting that his talent had not been outstanding enough to be admitted. Instead, the current head of law, Lord Andre, had indeed graduated from the Celestial Academy, and, at barely 5,000 years old, was already a level 12 warrior. He began pointing at our boy with his finger, making it clear that with his talent, passing the entrance exam would be no problem at all. If he stood out, he would even have the opportunity to go to the main headquarters of the Celestial Academy on the main star of the Tianxi system. Lu Sheng's eyes widened in surprise. He couldn't believe that Lan had so much confidence in him. While Lan's eyes were shining with seriousness, he mentioned that this was the true place where the prodigies of the cosmos gathered and the elites of countless races fought. There, common talents were crushed without a trace, making the Yamuxing sector seem, by comparison, pitifully small and insignificant. Lu Sheng extended his hands, feeling somewhat confused. It seemed incredible to him that the sector was considered small since he couldn't even afford to buy a spaceship to move within it. Lan couldn't help but feel somewhat surprised. Then, he began to stare at our boy, and, showing two fingers, revealed that the Celestial Academy originally only recruited students once every 1,000 years. The last time had been 300 years ago, and following tradition, he would have to wait another 700. Lu Sheng remained listening to Lan's explanation in silence. With a cheerful smile, Lan also added that they had been lucky. An important person had appeared who requested to use the Celestial Academy's stellar lineage scheme to evaluate talent, and they would take advantage of this influence to take the test together. As long as our boy met the standard, he could be exceptionally admitted. Our boy's eyes widened in surprise. He couldn't believe that the normal wait was 700 years, and he wondered what kind of important person would have the authority to change this. Lan began imagining a powerful warrior with orange hair, mentioning that Lan Che, son of Space Marquis Lano, belonged to a family of level 13 warriors whose fame resonated across 10 stellar sectors. His eyes began to shine with seriousness when he revealed that the Lano family had its origins in the Yamu sector and had been the cradle of the most outstanding talents and warriors for more than 50,000 years. Marquis Lano was always faithful to his roots. His descendants always returned to the Yamu sector to participate in aptitude tests. His second son, Lan Che, had already demonstrated in previous tests that he possessed an extraordinary life condition of 5-star moonlight level, and it was expected that this time he would achieve a new breakthrough to reach the Yaori level. Lu Sheng did not lose his composure and, with a curious expression, asked if the extraordinary life condition was not fixed but could continuously improve. With a sincere tone, Lan admitted that although it was very difficult, it was not impossible. A level 13 warrior, if determined, could ensure that his descendants possessed physical talent comparable to his own, for example, by making all his offspring neo-humans with modified genomes. Lu Sheng put his hand under his chin and began to ponder in silence. The idea that even genomes could be modified seemed to him a complete insolence. Lan closed his eyes and mentioned that, in the end, this was only an imitation, and an artificial product, capable of reaching 70%. His eyes began to shine with confidence when he made it clear that reaching even half was already something extraordinary. He explained that the extraordinary life condition was the most wonderful and mysterious existence in this universe, and that each specimen with an innate condition, like the one our boy possessed, was an extremely valuable base material. Lu Sheng remained silent and couldn't help but feel somewhat confused. Lan extended his hand and bet that, when the test was over, countless stellar nobles would be eager to marry their daughters to him, instantly making him the most sought-after son-in-law in this star sector. Lu Sheng began to touch his head and with a forced smile started waving his hand, jokingly telling Lan that if he had a daughter, for their friendship's sake, he might even consider it. Upon hearing this, Lan couldn't help clenching his fists, and his eyes began to shine with excitement. And with a smile, he mentioned that he had plenty of descendants. Our boy panicked, realizing that he had messed up and that apparently aliens didn't understand what a polite rejection meant. With a nervous smile, Lu Sheng began to wave his hands in denial, explaining that it was a joke and revealed that he already had a wife. While Lan's eyes were shining, with a smile he questioned how for someone of his level 1 spouse could be enough. Lu Sheng came out of his trance and felt somewhat confused. Lan mentioned that a powerful man should be surrounded by beauties everywhere. He only had to leave his seed and then leave, as this was a blessing for them. Lu Sheng began to imagine himself sitting on a throne and surrounded by women. This thought made him turn red like a tomato. He knew that if he did something like that, his wife would not forgive him. Lan began to show her tablet and asked Lu Sheng if he knew that person. Lu Sheng came out of his thoughts and his attention focused on it, leaving him somewhat curious. The tablet had a wanted poster with the disguise that Lu Sheng used to give Milton what he deserved. Lu Sheng couldn't help but go into shock, while Lan watched him in silence. Lu Sheng's eyes began to shine with seriousness. Internally he denied knowing that man, feeling relieved for having used his spiritual power to alter his appearance, even though the result had been too ugly. With a gaze full of contempt, Lan revealed that this person was being sought by the C's family, who had been after him for some time. It was said that he had made Milton look ridiculous. Lu Sheng began to pretend and mention that Guy had it well deserved, stating that if it weren't for the connection he had with Milton's sister, he himself would have beaten him until his intestines came out. Lan couldn't help but smile and with a cheerful gaze asked if Lu Sheng also had problems with that guy. However, he immediately downplayed the matter and added with a laugh that, maybe, once his extraordinary physique was confirmed, the Shi's family themselves would end up begging him to marry their daughter. Lan and Lu Sheng began to walk through the spaceship. Lan approached the ship's window, put his arms behind his back and with a smile mentioned that they had already arrived and asked our boy to look at the Gate of the Firmament. Lu Sheng approached and saw a gigantic door. Lan mentioned that it was really impressive, explaining that when the Yamu Star sector fell due to the invasion of dimensional beasts, this door became their last battlefield. With a curious gaze, Lu Sheng turned around and asked what that giant disc that looked like a sundial was. Once the spaceship passed by it, Lan explained that it was the Disc of Destiny, and it served to evaluate lineage and the level of extraordinary physique. They began to observe attentively, and Lan revealed that, according to what was said, when a truly immortal lineage descended, all the pearls on the disc would light up with a glow that would make the stars tremble, and an absolutely incredible phenomenon would occur. While Lu Sheng's eyes were shining with confusion, he asked what kind of phenomenon it would be. Lan closed his eyes and admitted that no one knew. From the creation of the Yamu star sector until that moment, the stellar disk of destiny had never been fully lit. Even the most powerful warriors had barely managed to illuminate less than half. A while later, the ship landed. After getting off it, the two arrived in front of the gigantic stargate. Lan climbed the stairs, and with a serene gaze, Lu Sheng began to follow him. In front of them was an old man holding a magic staff. With a kind smile, Lan extended his hand and mentioned that he was the director of the Supreme Celestial Institute of the Yamu Star Sector, Lord Mo Yun, one of the few truly powerful beings in the entire sector. Lu Sheng began to observe the old man carefully, realizing that he emitted the same aura as Sheris. He was at least level 12, a true first-class warrior, and must be primarily responsible for the evaluation. At that moment, another spaceship prepared to land. Everyone's attention was fixed on it, leaving them somewhat confused. Lan's eyes began to shine with confidence, and a smile spread across his face upon noticing that he had arrived. Lu Sheng began to observe the ship in silence, not knowing what was happening. Two powerful warriors descended from the ship and landed in front of them. One of them had orange hair. It was Lan Ga. With a serene gaze, he began to walk toward Lu Sheng and the others while being escorted by his men. Lan Ga placed his hand over his chest, closed his eyes, and with a smile bowed his head before Mo Yun as a sign of respect, conveying greetings on behalf of his father. Lu Sheng's attention was fixed on him and his eyes filled with tranquility. Upon noticing his dominant and arrogant attitude, he understood that this man was also a level 12 warrior, whose power was not less than that of the director. This showed him that the family of the Stellar Marquis possessed a truly impressive foundation by being able to afford an escort of such caliber. Mo Yun began stroking his beard and, after thanking Marquis Lan Nuo for his consideration, revealed that in reality, the opening of the Stellar Disc of Destiny on this occasion was not only because of his presence. While Lan's eyes were shining with joy, he extended his hand and with a smile questioned whether there was any warrior among those present who deserved his attention. Mo Yun began to gaze toward the ground and decided to start first. Then he grabbed his magic staff tightly, used his power, and the stellar disc of destiny began to open. Everyone's attention was fixed on it, and Mo Yun announced that they had arrived at an exceptional moment. The aptitude evaluation with the stellar disc of destiny, which only occurred once every 1,000 years, officially began, and he urged everyone to come closer without wasting time. Mo Yun began to stroke his beard and could not help but smile, as he felt great curiosity about the genius that the chief of execution spoke of, and about what kind of surprise they might bring him. Lu Sheng's eyes began to shine with determination, and he remained calm. Thanks for watching Vivify Recaps. If you enjoyed it, hit like, subscribe, and drop your next recap request in the comments. See you in the next one.